The alarm was triggered by a sterile, data-driven report from the International Atomic Energy Agency, a report that landed on desks in the Pentagon and the White House like a live grenade. Iran's stockpile of uranium, enriched to 60% purity, has crossed a critical, undeclared red line. They now possess enough near-weapons-grade material for multiple nuclear devices. The breakout time, the window needed to produce a bomb, has shrunk from months to mere weeks, perhaps even days. The buffer is gone. The final countdown may have already begun. So the question that is being asked in every secure intelligence briefing from Washington to Tel Aviv is this: what is the United States going to do about it? And what assets are already moving in the dark? This is not a political failure. It is a strategic emergency. The 2015 nuclear deal, the JCPOA, is a ghost. The limits it imposed are a distant memory. Today's reality is a stockpile 30 times larger than that deal ever permitted. Let's be clear about what 60% enrichment means. It is a razor's edge away from the 90% purity required for a weapon. The most difficult and time-consuming work of enrichment is already done. Going from 60 to 90% is a technical sprint, not a marathon. For years, Iran has played a careful game of escalation, adding centrifuges, increasing purity, and accumulating material step by step, always staying just below the threshold that would trigger a massive military response. But this latest move is different. It's an act of defiance so blatant, so aggressive, that it can only be interpreted as a direct challenge. Tehran is signaling to the world that it has mastered the fuel cycle and is now standing at the nuclear threshold, daring the West to act. The centrifuges at the Fordo fuel enrichment plant, buried deep inside a mountain to protect it from airstrikes, are spinning faster than ever. Advanced IR-6 models are being brought online, machines that can enrich uranium at a velocity thought impossible just a decade ago. This isn't a slow creep. It's a calculated surge. A surge designed to create facts on the ground, to make an Iranian nuclear capability an irreversible reality before its enemies can mobilize. While diplomats in Vienna issue sternly worded condemnations, the real response is happening far from the cameras. It's happening in the classified annexes of intelligence reports and on the encrypted networks of the United States military. Because Washington knows that sanctions and strongly worded letters will not stop a spinning centrifuge. Just hours after the IAEA report was confirmed by U.S. intelligence, an Air Force RC-135S Cobra Ball aircraft, a specialized plane designed to track ballistic missile tests and gather signals intelligence, lifted off from an airbase in the Mediterranean. Its flight path was direct, eastward, towards Iran. But then, as it crossed into Iraqi airspace, its public transponder went dark. The plane vanished from all commercial tracking sites. It is now a ghost, hunting for signatures in the electromagnetic spectrum. It's searching for the telltale signs of missile launch preparations, for the specific frequencies associated with warhead arming sequences. This is the first move on the chessboard, a silent, high-tech intelligence-gathering mission to answer the most critical question. Has Iran already made the decision to attach a warhead to a Shahab-3 missile? The disappearance of that single aircraft marks the transition from a political crisis to a military one. What it detects in the coming hours could trigger a chain of events from which there is no turning back. Rehook. That RC-135 Cobra Ball is not operating in a vacuum. The intelligence it gathers is being fed in real time to a much larger and much more lethal set of assets. As of 3 hours ago, the USS Abraham Lincoln Carrier Strike Group, previously on a routine patrol in the Arabian Sea, canceled all scheduled port visits. It is now steaming at flank speed towards the Persian Gulf. This is not a drill. This is battle space preparation. The carrier itself is a floating fortress, a symbol of American power projection, but its true strength lies in its escorts. Ticonderoga-class cruisers and Arleigh Burke-class destroyers, equipped with the AEGIS combat system, are forming a protective screen. These ships carry hundreds of Tomahawk cruise missiles, precision weapons that can strike targets deep inside Iran from hundreds of a mile away, flying low to evade radar detection. Below the waves, a Virginia-class fast-attack submarine is believed to be detaching from the group, slipping silently into the Gulf of Oman, its mission profile unknown, but its capabilities are terrifying. It is a silent hunter, capable of clandestine surveillance or launching its own volley of cruise missiles from beneath the surface. This mobilization is a direct response to the uranium report. It's part of a long-standing, undeclared war that has been fought in the shadows for over 2 decades. A war of sabotage, cyber attacks, and targeted assassinations. We all remember Stuxnet, the sophisticated computer worm, allegedly developed by the US and Israel, that physically destroyed nearly 1,000 Iranian centrifuges by secretly manipulating their spin rates. We remember the series of mysterious explosions at Iranian military and nuclear sites. We remember the assassinations of top Iranian nuclear scientists, gunned down in the streets of Tehran by operatives on motorcycles. Each of those actions was designed to delay, to disrupt, to push back the timeline of Iran's nuclear ambitions. But this time is different. The problem is no longer about delaying the program. The program has reached a critical stage of maturity. The new objective is about preventing the final assembly and deployment of a weapon. This requires a different level of intelligence and a different threshold for action. Inside Tehran, the situation is not as monolithic as it appears. The decision to surge enrichment was pushed by hardliners within the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, or IRGC. They see a nuclear weapon as the ultimate guarantee of the regime's survival, a shield against foreign intervention, and the key to dominating the Middle East. They are willing to risk sanctions, isolation, and even a limited military conflict to achieve this goal. They look at North Korea and see a state that survives because it has the bomb. That is the model they seek to emulate. However, there are other factions within the Iranian government, more pragmatic elements within the foreign ministry and the economic sectors, who are terrified of the consequences. They understand that a full-scale war with the United States and its allies would be catastrophic, leading to the destruction of the country's infrastructure and potentially the collapse of the regime they are trying to preserve. This internal power struggle creates a volatile and unpredictable environment. Is the surge a unified national strategy, or is it a gamble by the IRGC to force the issue and silence their internal rivals? Washington's intelligence agencies are working overtime to understand this internal dynamic, because it is the key to the entire crisis. Is there a diplomatic off-ramp, or is the IRGC in full control, driving the nation towards a nuclear destiny regardless of the cost? The answer to that question will determine the next move. And as the carrier group sails, and the spy plane listens, a cryptic three-word directive has just been issued from a secure server at the Pentagon to strategic assets worldwide. A directive that has only been seen in the most classified war game scenarios until now. Sources confirm the message was simple. Operation Damocles is active. Rehook. Operation Damocles. The name itself is a chilling reference to the ancient parable of the sword hanging by a single thread, a symbol of imminent and ever-present peril. This is not a plan for a conventional invasion. It is a contingency for a decapitation of Iran's nuclear program, designed to be swift, precise, and deniable. It has never been publicly acknowledged, but its activation means the situation has now crossed a critical threshold. Damocles is not a single action but a multi-pronged assault, blending 21st-century warfare with classic espionage. The first and most critical vector is cyber. Intelligence sources suggest the deployment of a new generation of malware, a successor to Stuxnet, far more insidious than its predecessor. Where Stuxnet aimed for destruction, this new weapon, codenamed Kronos, is designed for deception. Instead of simply breaking the centrifuges, Kronos would subtly alter their operational parameters, feeding false diagnostic data back to the Iranian controllers. The centrifuges would spin at incorrect speeds, the gas pressure would be wrong, the temperatures would fluctuate outside of safe limits. The result? The highly enriched uranium hexafluoride gas would be improperly processed, potentially rendered useless for a weapon, or the machines themselves would suffer catastrophic failure weeks or months down the line. Iran would be producing worthless material, all while their scientists believed everything was functioning perfectly. It's a silent, invisible sabotage that could cripple their program from the inside. A technological poison pill. The second vector of Damocles is kinetic. While the cyber attack works in the dark, the Pentagon is preparing for a more overt option. For years, the primary challenge of any strike on Iran has been the Fordo facility, buried under nearly 300 feet of rock and soil. But the U.S. Air Force has a new key for that lock. The GBU-72 Advanced 5,000-pound penetrator. This is a bunker buster of immense power, designed specifically for these hard and deeply buried targets. The plan would call for a coordinated strike. Stealth bombers, like the B-2 Spirit, would fly undetected through Iranian airspace. The first wave of GBU-72s would crack the mountain open. Subsequent bombs would fly through the hole created by the first, detonating deep inside the enrichment halls. The goal is total destruction, to turn the entire facility into a collapsed, irradiated tomb. But the risks are astronomical. A strike on a nuclear facility could release radioactive material into the atmosphere, and it would be an undeniable act of war, likely igniting a regional conflict that could draw in Israel, Saudi Arabia, and Iranian proxies from Lebanon to Yemen. While these military options are being prepared, a third, parallel front is being opened. The U.S. Treasury Department is activating the final, most severe stage of economic warfare. These are not the broad sanctions of the past. These are entity-specific sanctions, targeting the individual companies, financial institutions, and even specific people within the IRGC, who form the logistical and financial backbone of the nuclear and ballistic missile programs. This is a move to sever the head of the snake, to cut off the money that pays the scientists, buys the components on the black market, and funds the entire operation. As Damocles spools up, the diplomatic track has gone into overdrive. The Secretary of State's plane is not heading to a press conference. It's on its way to Oman, a key intermediary that has passed messages between Washington and Tehran for decades. The public message is one of condemnation. The private message being delivered by the Omanis is a stark, unambiguous ultimatum. Halt the 60% enrichment and allow full IAEA inspections immediately, or face devastating consequences. The sword of Damocles is now hanging over Tehran. Then, the situation escalates. An alert flashes from a human intelligence source on the ground, a trusted asset in the city of Isfahan, home to a crucial uranium conversion facility. In the dead of night, local residents reported hearing a series of muffled, percussive thumps from the direction of the heavily guarded site. Not a large explosion like an airstrike, but something smaller, more intimate. Within minutes, the entire area went dark. A total communications and power blackout. Is this the work of Kronos? Or has a special operations team on the ground just triggered the kinetic phase of Damocles? Rehook. The Isfahan incident is the tipping point. Initial intelligence assessments filtering back to the CIA's Langley headquarters are ruling out a missile or airstrike. The blast signatures were too small, too precise. The power and communications blackout was too localized. This was not an attack from the outside. This was sabotage from within. The shadow war has just gone kinetic, deep inside one of Iran's most secure facilities. This development changes the entire equation. An external attack allows the Iranian regime to rally its people against a common enemy, to play the victim on the world stage while accelerating its nuclear program under the guise of self-defense. But an internal attack is a cancer. It suggests a catastrophic failure of their own security apparatus. It means that either US or Israeli intelligence has successfully activated a sleeper cell, or worse for the regime, that there is a sophisticated, armed internal opposition movement with the capability to strike at the heart of their most prized strategic assets. The paranoia inside the IRGC command structure right now must be overwhelming. Who can they trust? Is the scientist working on the centrifuge cascade a patriot or a traitor? Is the security guard at the gate loyal, or is he working for a foreign power? This single act of sabotage does more to disrupt the program than a dozen cruise missiles might have. It forces them to look inward, to purge their own ranks, to slow down every process with loyalty tests and burdensome security checks. It grinds the momentum of their nuclear sprint to a halt. Now, both Washington and Tehran are facing an excruciating set of choices. For the White House, the question is whether the Isfahan sabotage is enough. Was this the primary goal of Operation Damocles? A deniable internal strike to cripple the program without starting a full-scale war? Or was it merely the opening salvo, designed to shape the battlefield before the B-2s are launched? Pushing harder could tip the region into chaos, but not pushing hard enough could be seen as weakness, allowing Iran to recover and resume its work with even greater determination. For Tehran, the moment of truth has arrived. The IRGC hardliners are screaming for retaliation. They will demand a response against U.S. forces in Iraq or Syria, or a missile strike against a U.S. ally like Saudi Arabia or the UAE. To do nothing would be to lose face, to admit that their billion-dollar security state was penetrated and broken. But to retaliate is to walk directly into the trap, to give Washington the casus belli it needs to unleash the full, devastating force of Operation Damocles. The pragmatists will argue for de-escalation, to pull back from the 60% enrichment, and use the incident as a reason to return to the negotiating table. But their voices may be drowned out by the drums of war. We are now at the point of no return. The initial IAEA report was the spark. The American military movements were the escalation. The sabotage at Isfahan was the accelerant poured on the flames. The next 48 hours are the most dangerous the Middle East has faced in a generation. Every action will have a reaction. Every decision could lead to a catastrophic miscalculation. The world is watching to see if this is the final, desperate gambit before a historic diplomatic breakthrough, or the opening shots of a devastating new war. The front line is about to break. The pieces are in motion. The world holds its breath. To stay ahead of the front line as this crisis develops, make sure you subscribe to Breaking_the_front and activate notifications. This is a story that will not wait.